Another solo review, I guess you could say. I've got no strings on me anymore. Yes, you've read the title correctly. Today we'll be reviewing Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I was lucky enough to see it at London Film Festival. It's the latest of many adaptations of the classic novel, and it's fine. It's pretty decent, but we'll get into all of that kind of stuff. In my opinion, it's nowhere near as good as everyone seems to be making it out to be. I am the most negative person I've heard about the film, but it's great if you're loving it, and there is a good chance you will love it as well. So, this is just a take of one random person on the internet. You don't have to listen to it. I will preface by saying I do come into this review as someone who is not really a fan of a lot of Guillermo del Toro's work, and I think given the fact that the film is very sort of Del Toro heavy, like a lot of his trademarks, a lot of his style, a lot of the reasons people really love him are so deeply entrenched into the movie, it just means it doesn't appeal to me in a way that it might others, in a similar vein to how I wasn't a massive fan of Wes Anderson's film The French Dispatch from last year. However, a lot of people who are big Wes Anderson fans really took to it, really loved it. So I do think that if you are a Guillermo del Toro fan, you will love it. You will have a much better time with it than I did. I don't know. I just generally find a lot of the films to be very interesting and creative stylistically. Of course, some of the most creative films of the decade of all time, even, but lacking in any real much substance. As Guillermo sort of becomes enveloped in creating these unique, fantastical worlds, Pan's Labyrinth excluded. I do really love Pan's Labyrinth, but aside from that, I'm not a big fan of much of his work, and this one is sort of no different. Visually, the film is very striking and incredibly well crafted. The stop motion animation style works beautifully, like it's just perfect, and the character designs, landscapes, textures of the film, they all create a very vivid aesthetic that is truly a spectacle to look at. However, I fundamentally don't feel that the story that accompanies it was like I don't think it was on the same level. This very adult, grimy, imperfect, yet somehow mysteriously beautiful style is very captivating, and it will be engrossing for both adults and children. I'm sure there is a lot to gain from watching it from both perspectives. However, I feel that it is in sort of this attempt to find a balance between the adult-oriented stories that Guillermo is known for and the sort of Netflix family animated film that this, at its essence, is. This is where the film majorly falters. It never really strikes that balance for me. Interesting themes about like fascism and like the very nature of life are juxtaposed with very unsubtle messages for children, like the importance of honesty and selflessness, and that just sort of lack depth and lack nuance, creating this whole quite messy thematic affair. I wish it leaned more into the adult side of things and really took its themes seriously, rather than sort of just touching on them briefly here and there before moving on to a really annoying, obvious, and poorly integrated musical interlude. Like, the film never finds the perfect medium like many Pixar films do, many other great animated films do. Several times I felt like the film was sort of heading in a direction that was very interesting. Some of like the most haunting, disturbing, and yet stunning imagery and filmmaking I've seen like all year can all be found in this film, but I feel that it sort of just pulled back slightly and it never fully committed with what it was trying to do, and overall left me just feeling a little unsatisfied. It left me feeling a little cold. I never really connected with this film on an emotional level like I feel it wanted me to. Whilst the lens of the rise of Mussolini's fascist regime and the sort of outbreak of the Second World War, it's a very interesting lens to view the story of Pinocchio through. I feel that the story of Pinocchio itself, just to this point, feels a little tired, not least because of the fact we've already seen 3 adaptations of the novel this year already. The film sort of cherry picks moments from the source material and tries to like cram them together in a way that doesn't quite flow correctly. It feels like the film almost is a series of vignettes rather than being able to actually tell a sort of compelling, consistent story. Having said that, there were some aspects, again, that I really, really loved about the narrative. Everything in the afterlife, I think, is very strong, as is the section of film taken up by Pinocchio sort of training as a soldier. However, I think all of that, the circus stuff, is rushed, and the ending set piece is somewhat out of place. Therefore, again, leading me back to the sort of conclusion that this film itself shows moments of absolute greatness, however, doesn't come together as one complete package. Similarly, I think if you look at the characters, like Sebastian Cricket serves as a very fresh depiction of the character. Jiminy Cricket, they changed the name, probably going to get the rights or something like that. As is Geppetto, who undergoes a very interesting character arc and is maybe the standout of character of the movie for me. However, Pinocchio himself is an annoying little brat throughout the movie that I wanted to die pretty much every time he was on screen. Well, maybe that's a little harsh, but still, I get that he's a deliberate blank canvas, learning as the audience does and all of that kind of stuff. but he makes for a borderline unwatchable protagonist, just given how annoying he is throughout the movie. I feel like maybe I've come across like a bit negative throughout the review, as I would still recommend this movie and would probably give it like a 7 out of 10. However, I feel like this is more frustration rather than anger and negative feeling towards the film, because like Guillermo taps into the most interesting parts of the Pinocchio story, tells it through some of the best animation of the decade. The splat score is great, and from a technical standpoint, this film is like, this one's a masterpiece. Like, genuinely, from a technical standpoint. However, it is in the sort of story, substance, and characters that this film really loses its footing, and it's all a real shame, because I really, really wanted to love this film. I was really hoping this was maybe the one Guillermo del Toro film, aside from Pan's Labyrinth, as I mentioned earlier, that really just connected with me, but it doesn't. Like, it just lacks subtlety in places, downright bad songs, which I didn't mention. I don't really like the songs, they're just not very good. They might get a Best Original Song nomination at the Oscar, but I don't know if that's entirely deserved. And the attempt to sort of appeal to a demographic that is just way too broad. It all means the film doesn't quite come together perfectly. If we're doing awards chances, which we have done a lot in the past, because this is a very interesting case, like, will it get picture? Maybe. It's sort of in there. It's in the top 15 at this point, really. It's probably Netflix's number 2/3. Like, I don't know. They've got Glass Onion, got All Quiet on the Western Front, and they've got this. It's going to be interesting to see how they sort of balance the three things. It's definitely it's a shoe-in for an animated feature nom. I think it's going to win. I think a lot of people do. I think it's honestly the clear favourite at this point. And I think you'd be stupid for not having it winning this category. Other stuff like VFX, there is potential there. I do have it in currently. Song, as I mentioned, score, I do think could happen as well. There is stuff like costumes, maybe adapted screenplay. I think that would be a weird nomination. I think that would be an undeserving nomination. However, it could sort of happen. Adapted screenplay is a very weak category, and therefore you do wonder at that point is how many sort of things can just keep building up to give it the best picture nom. Maybe we'll see if it can sort of build that momentum. I don't think it will do at this point after having seen the film. I'm slightly more negative on its Oscar chances, obviously aside from the categories I mentioned. But having said that, it's still better than the Robert Zemeckis Disney Plus one. So there's that. But, what did you think about it? Have you seen it? Probably not, but how's my review, like, tampered your expectations? Or maybe even more excited, given that I said at the preface, if you love Guillermo del Toro, I think you will love this film. This may be one of your favourite of the year, as it is for many, and that's completely fine. You don't have to follow my opinion. My opinion is my opinion. But let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe for more film reviews and awards content. But as always, see you in the next